Hi, Miss Eglin here. Today I'm going to be reading An Unforgettable Journey. Build background. The Hmong people of Southeast Asia have faced persecution and exile for more than 2 centuries. That's 200 years. The autobiographical article that follows is one of several Hmong life stories collected by Shusheng Shan, a teacher at the University of California, Santa Barbara. Mizui Siong was one of the students who contributed a life story. The book that the teacher and her students put together is called Hmong Means Free: Life in Laos and America. Preview the story. In 1975, when Mizui Siong was just 3 years old, she fled Laos along with her parents, step-uncle, and 2 sisters. This autobiography describes the family's many adventures and difficulties as they journey through jungles, fields, and mountain trails, cross the Mekong River to Thailand, spend time in a refugee camp, and finally arrive in California. Read with a purpose. Read to discover how a family copes with having to leave their homeland. So An Unforgettable Journey is the title, so we know this is autobiographical, so the author is writing this about her life, and that means this is nonfiction because it is a true story. And it starts here. I was born in a small village called Muang Cha in Laos on April 30th, 1972. At the time I was born, my father was a soldier actively fighting alongside the American Central Intelligence Agency, or CIA, which is an intelligence gathering agency, against the communists. Although a war was in progress, life seemed peaceful. We did not think of ever leaving Laos. But one day, our lives were changed forever. We found ourselves without a home or a country, and with the need to seek refuge in another country. This period of relocation involved a lot of changes, adjustments, and adaptations. We experienced changes in our language, customs, traditional values, and social status. Some made the transition quickly. Others have never fully adjusted. The changes my family and I experienced are the foundation of my identity today. After Laos became a communist country in 1975, my family, along with many others, fled in fear of persecution. Because my father had served as a commanding officer for 11 years with the American Central Intelligence Agency in what is known to the American public as the Secret War, my family had no choice but to leave immediately. My family's life was in danger, along with those of thousands of others. We were forced to leave loved ones behind, including my grandmother, who was ill in bed the day we fled our village. For a month, my family walked through the dense tropical jungles and rice fields, along rugged trails through many mountains, and battled the powerful Mekong River. We traveled in silence at night and slept in the daytime. Children were very hard to keep quiet. Many parents feared the communist soldiers would hear the cries of their children. Therefore, they drugged the children with opium to keep them quiet. Some parents even left those children who would not stop crying behind. Fortunately, whenever my parents told my sisters and me to keep quiet, we listened and obeyed. I do not remember much about our flight, but I do have certain memories that have been imprinted in my mind. It is all so unclear. The experience was like a bad dream. When you wake up, you don't remember what it was you had dreamed about, but recall only those bits and pieces of the dream that stand out the most. I remember sleeping under tall trees. I was like a little ant placed in a field of tall grass, surrounded by dense jungle with trees and bushes all around me, right, left, in the back, and in front of me. I also remember that it rained a lot and that it was cold. We took only what we could carry, and it was not much. My father carried a sack of rice, which had to last us the whole way. My mother carried one extra change of clothing for each of us, a few personal belongings, and my baby sister on her back. My older sister and I helped carry pots and pans. My step-uncle carried water, dried meat, and his personal belongings. Okay, so we see a picture there, and it says analyzing visuals, viewing, and interpreting. In what ways does this illustration represent the family's experience of crossing the Mekong River? From the jungles to the open fields, we walked along a path. We came across a trail of red ants, and being a stubborn child, I refused to walk over them. I wanted someone to pick me up because I was scared, but my parents kept walking ahead. They kept telling me to hurry up and step over the ants, but I just stood there and cried. Finally, my father came back and put me on his shoulders, along with the heavy sack of rice he was carrying. After experiencing many cold days and rainy nights, we finally saw Thailand on the other side of the Mekong River. My parents bribed several fishermen to row us across. The fishermen knew we were desperate, yet, instead of helping us, they took advantage of us. We had to give them all our valuables, silver bars, silver coins, paper money, and my mother's silver wedding necklace, which had cost a lot of money. When it got dark, the fishermen came back with a small fishing boat and took us across the river. The currents were high and powerful. I remember being very scared. I kept yelling, "We're going to fall out. We're going to fall into the river." My mother tried to reassure me, but I kept screaming in fear. Finally, we got across safely. My family, along with many other families, were picked up by the Thai police and taken to an empty bus station for the night. Okay, so we're going to move along here to the next page. After a whole month at this temporary refugee camp set up in the bus station, during which we ate rice, dried fish, roots we dug up, and bamboo shoots we cut down, and drank water from streams, we were in very poor shape due to the lack of nutrition. Our feet were also swollen from walking. We were taken to the refugee camp in Nong Khai, where disease was rampant, and many people got sick. My family suffered a loss. My baby sister, who was only a few months old, died. She had become very skinny from the lack of milk, and there was no medical care available. The memory of her death still burns in my mind like a flame. On the evening she died, my older sister and I were playing with our cousins outside the building where we stayed. My father came out to tell us the sad news and told us to go find my step-uncle. After we found him, we went inside and saw our mother mourning the baby's death. Fortunately, our family had relatives around to support and comfort us. Our family life in the camp was very unstable, characterized by deprivation and neglect. My older sister and I were left alone for days while my parents were outside the camp trying to earn money to buy extra food. My parents fought a lot during this period because we were all under such stress. They knew if we remained in Thailand, there would be no telling what would become of us. We had to find a better life. Some people in the camp were being sponsored to go to the United States. The news spread that anyone who had served in the military with the CIA could apply to go to America. Since my step-uncle had already gone there 2 years earlier, he sponsored my family. Because my father had been in the military and we had a sponsor, it took only 6 months to process our papers, when it usually took a year or more. It took a full day to travel to Bangkok, where we stayed for 4 nights. The building we stayed in was one huge room. It was depressing and nerve-wracking. I especially remember how, when we got off the bus to go into the building, a small child about my age came up to my family to beg for food. I recall the exact words she said to my father. "Uncle, can you give me some food? I am hungry. My parents are dead and I am here alone." My dad gave her a piece of bread that we had packed for her lunch. After she walked away, my family found an empty corner and rolled out our bedding for the night. That night, the same child came around again, but people chased her away, which made me sad. In the morning, I ran to get in line for breakfast. Each person received a bowl of rice porridge with a few strips of chicken in it. For 4 days, we remained in that building, not knowing when we could leave for the United States. Many families had been there for weeks, months, perhaps even years. On the 4th day, my family was notified to be ready early the next morning to be taken to the airport. The plane ride took a long time, and I got motion sickness. I threw up a lot. Only when I saw my step-uncle's face after we landed did I know we had come to the end of our journey. We had come in search of a better life in the land of giants. So in this box it says social studies link, and there is a map here. And it says the Vietnam War and the Hmong refugees. War often leads to the exile of thousands of civilians, and those are people who are not in the military, on the losing side. Such was the fate of the Hmong people, most of whom had supported the United States in its war in Vietnam and Laos. In 1975, when the communists won, 1/3 of the Hmong people fled. More than 135,000 ended up in the United States. Most live in California, but there are also Hmong communities in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Georgia, Texas, Rhode Island, Nebraska, North Carolina, Colorado, and Montana. This map shows the countries of Southeast Asia and their capitals as they existed just before 1975. When my Zui Siang and her family left their village of Mong Chai, which was located north of Vietnam in Laos. Today, the part of this map of the world looks somewhat different. For instance, North and South Vietnam are now united into one country. So you were to ask yourself, what does Mzui Siang's autobiography reflect? How does her biography reflect the history of the Hmong in Laos? So if you kind of zoom in here. Okay, so we see that was at the time North Vietnam, South Vietnam, Hanoi, Saigon, Cambodia's down here, Thailand, Laos, Burma, Myanmar, over here's Bangladesh. Okay, so think about that as you are listening. On October 2nd, 1978, my family arrived in Los Angeles International Airport, where my uncle was waiting anxiously. We stayed with my uncle in Los Angeles for 2 weeks and then settled in Isla Vista because there were already a few Hmong families there. We knew only one family in Isla Vista, but later we met other families who my parents had known in their village and from villages nearby. It was in Isla Vista that my life really began. My home life was now more stable. My mother gave birth to a boy a month after we arrived in the United States. It was a joyous event because the first 3 children she had were all girls. Boys are desired and valued far more than girls in Hmong culture. I entered kindergarten at the Isla Vista Elementary School. The first day was scary because I could not speak any English. Fortunately, my cousin, who had been in the United States for 3 years and spoke English, was in the same class with me. She led me to the playground where the children were playing. I was shocked to see so many faces of different colors. The Caucasian student shocked me the most. I had never seen people with blonde hair before. The sight sent me to a bench where I sat and watched everyone in amazement. In class, I was introduced to coloring. I did not know how to hold a crayon or what it was for. My teacher had to show me how to color. I also soon learned the alphabet. This was the beginning of my lifelong goal to get an education. Now that I am older, I treasure the long but valuable lessons my parents tried to teach us. Lessons that gave me a sense of identity as a Hmong. Nothing comes easy, my parents always said. As I attempt to get a college education, I remember how my parents have been really supportive of me throughout my schooling. But because they never had a chance to get an education themselves, they were not able to help me whenever I could not solve a math problem or write an English paper. Although they cannot help me in my schoolwork, I know in my heart that they care about me and want me to be successful so I can help them when they can no longer help themselves. Therefore, I am determined to do well at the university. I want to become a role model for my younger brother and sisters, for I am the very first member of my family to attend college. I feel a real sense of accomplishment to have set such an example. That is the end of the autobiography. Okay, thanks for listening.